Coming up on Network Africa, President of Kenya announces major cabinet reshuffle among his ministers. A UN-backed inquiry into abuses committed in Ethiopia to end its work next week after member countries chose not to renew its mandate. Plus, Ugandan opposition leader Bobby Wine arrested on arrival in the country. Hello everyone, welcome to the program. I'm Joke Rogers. Here in Lagos, Kenyan President William Ruto has announced a major cabinet reshuffle, placing the Foreign Affairs Ministry under the Chief Minister's office and reassigning 7 other ministers. It comes after the president publicly criticized his ministers recently, accusing some of them of being clueless about their portfolios. For the Foreign Minister, Alfred Mutua, this is seen as a demotion as controversy rages over plans to deploy Kenyan police to Haiti to fight gangs. According to Mr. Ruto, the reshuffle is meant to optimize performance and enhance delivery as set out in the administration's manifesto. Meanwhile, Kenya's opposition leader, Raila Odinga, has questioned the country's decision to lead a peacekeeping mission in Haiti to combat gang violence there. Mr. Odinga, in an interview with a local TV station, terms it a wrong move, saying the planned police deployment in Haiti is not Kenya's priority. He is also asking the question of the uniqueness about Kenya that's being chosen to lead the multinational force in Haiti, adding that the East African region already had enough problems. According to Mr. Odinga, the situation in Haiti is dangerous, warning that the planned deployment risks the lives of the Kenyan policemen. On Monday, the United Nations Security Council approved the deployment for a year with a review after 9 months. However, some critics have opposed the move, expressing doubt over the ability of Kenyan police to take on Haiti's gangs. A United Nations mandated inquiry into what investigators say are continuing atrocities in Ethiopia faces closure after a UN website showed that no motion has been received to renew it. The European Union pledged a $680 million package on Tuesday that it had delayed in 2021 due to the war, and said the two sides were working to gradually normalize relations. Jutta Urpilainen, the European Union's Commissioner for International Partnerships, says that the pledge was on condition that Ethiopia would, among other things, ensure that there's accountability. The International Commission of Human Rights Experts on Ethiopia, created by the UN Human Rights Council in 2021 after a motion submitted by the European Union, said last month that war crimes and crimes against humanity are still being committed in the country. But Ethiopia denies committing widespread abuses.
The government of Ethiopia was able to reach a peace agreement, so-called Pretoria Agreement, in the end of last year. We wanted to start to normalize our relationship with Ethiopia, taking into account our 3 key asks, which we launched already in the beginning of the war. So there has to be a cessation of hostilities, there has to be access for humanitarian aid, and also there has to be accountability.
What we want to see is the actions following those commitments. And I think this is important because those commitments were made, and if they are broken in the next 24 hours by undermining efforts to continue a process which the EU put their trust in at the beginning, that victims who spoke to the Commission of Human Rights Experts put their trust in, if suddenly that is brushed away without any ongoing follow-up at the level of the Human Rights Council, I think the words of the EU and its commitments to accountability everywhere will be shaken.
Meanwhile, human rights groups are criticizing the fact that the UN-backed inquiry into abuses committed in Ethiopia will end its work next week. Human Rights Watch describes the decision not to renew the mandate of the UN-backed inquiry as scandalous. The International Commission of Human Rights experts said Ethiopia's military had committed war crimes during the conflict in Tigray, saying Eritrean soldiers were behind widespread sexual assaults. It also accused Tigrayan rebel fighters of serious atrocities. Even though the war in Tigray is officially over, the unit said earlier this week that there's a high risk that atrocities would continue in Ethiopia. However, Ethiopia has always opposed the work of the committee, describing it as politically motivated. Elsewhere, the main opposition party in Uganda says its leader, Robert Kyagulanyi, alias Bobby Wine, has been arrested at Entebbe International Airport as he returned from abroad. The National Unity Party describes his arrest as cowardly, as they had been planning to hold rallies after his arrival. Ahead of Mr. Kyagulanyi's return, the police had said that a planned procession from the airport was illegal. President Yoweri Museveni, who has been in power since 1986, has been criticized for being increasingly intolerant of the opposition. Bobby Wine has been arrested numerous times and has faced many charges, including treason. Rights groups accuse authorities of using trumped-up charges to oppress opposition in Uganda. Let's get more on this. Joining us now is Halima Atumani. Halima joins us live on the program. Halima, good to see you. But just before you came on the show, you had reported journalists were harassed at the point of Bobby Wine's arrest. Could you elaborate on this?
Yes, please. Today was quite a charged day. I think for journalists, we had not had this kind of action in a very long time. So you can imagine how newsrooms, were looking forward to this day, and indeed by early morning, because what we made to understand was that Bobby Wine was supposed to land at Entebbe International Airport at 10:30. So many journalists actually drove to the airport. But before they got to the airport, there were two checks. Security checks, and that was where they were arrested from most of the journalists. Actually, some of them were arrested then, and then once Bobby Wine was taken away from the airfield, as you can see, of course, there was a security convoy that was escorting him, including a helicopter. He really got the VIP treatment, including a helicopter that was taking him back home. So as they were heading out of the airport, journalists decided to follow the convoy. Unfortunately, when they got to one of the checkpoints where they pay to use the expressway, that was when, according to the journalists who were there, they saw people dressed up who they identified as Special Forces Command officers. Now, when you see Special Forces Command officers, these are people who are mandated with the security of the president. They only handle VVIP cases. But they were there, and the soldiers said they were hooded, they were wearing masks, so they were not be able to identify them, but they knew, because if you're a journalist in Uganda, you will tell the difference between a special force command officer and a normal everyday military officer, but also you also tell the difference between them and the everyday police officer. So yes, a number of journalists were arrested. One of them actually narrated to me and told me he was dragged out of the car through the window, and they were beating him everywhere, wherever whatever it is that they were using to beat them landed on him. So he said he had bruises all over his body, on his back, and he was going to get medical attention.
Well, it's not the first time that Bobby Wine is, being arrested. He's been arrested at different times for different reasons. Is the government usually hostile to the press in Uganda?
Look, when it comes to anything related to Bobby Wine, if you're covering Bobby Wine, first of all, you are going to be labeled, an opposition reporter. But also, many times, journalists have also had this experience. I think it was just a little after the elections. If you remember, there was a time journalists were actually beaten in front of the UN Human Rights Office because they had gone to wait for Bobby Wine, who had gone to report cases of human rights violations and killings of his supporters. So this is not the first time. The government, many times also, by the way, the one thing that was also very evident today, which is very relatable, is that it's always the military that is beating up journalists. Police, yes, police will beat us, but when it comes to the military, they come and when they come full swing, it's going to be bad for journalists. So it's not the first time.
And why has he been arrested this time around? Did the government give any reasons for this?
So what you need to be aware of was that before Bobby Wine actually left for the United States, for the period that he was there, Bobby Wine was carrying out a countrywide tour, opening up offices of the National Unity Party platform, different offices in different parts of the country. And with this came a lot of attention from the public. Thousands of people would come out, to welcome him in the various districts that he attended. But just 2 days before his departure, I think maybe let's say about 3 days before his departure, the police, that is when we had reports of, bombs being detonated around different parts of the city. And the police quickly came up and said, this political party needs to be aware that there are bomb attacks going on and their principal head could be a target of terrorists. So we urge them to stop. And that is how Bobby Wine stopped, the tour around the country. So before he came back, he kept tweeting and saying, when I get back to Kampala, when I get back to Uganda, I need 1 million people to march with me all the way to my home. And that is why the police swung into action, did not even give him 5 minutes in the airfield, as you saw, and he was arrested and swiftly taken home.
Right, so it has been difficult reaching out to members of his political party. Do we know their status at the moment?
Well, it's been quite a charged day. I will tell you that as I was driving along, the road that actually heads to Bobby Wine's home, the youth were, as soon as I got there, there was tear gas. So I had to park on the side and get out and just see what's going on. People were running around. The shop owners were closing shop. And then, the youth got rowdy. They were throwing stones and logs into the middle of the road. And then there was this one police truck that came and cleared the road, and also got a few youth, after beating them up, of course, got them to clear up the road. But there were patrols right from the morning, because I drove on that same road twice this morning. There were patrols in the morning. There were security checks around that area in the morning. Even when I came back, I think we're only lucky that everything came to an end after a heavy downpour as soon as Bobby Wine was taken to his home, obviously with him cordoned off with members of his party there. So it was a bit difficult to actually get to them, because all access to them was literally blocked by the military and security officers.
And what's the mood like in Kampala? What has the mood been like with all the events that have happened since Bobby Wine's arrival and his arrest?
Of course, people are charged, but one thing happens, and then there's always the peace. There are always parts of the country where you think everything is very peaceful. When I was speaking to the spokesperson of the Special Forces Command, because when I got to the military told me, no, we're not in charge. Please speak to SFC. Police also say no, they were the ones. Janice was saying these are the people who beat us. So I reached out to the Special Forces Command spokesperson, and he says, no, we didn't even know what was going on the other side. We were only in charge of what was happening at the National Airstrip, because today is World Teachers Day, and that's where the president was. So Special Forces had to be there because they are mandated with they are in charge of the president's security. So there are bits and places of areas that were peaceful, but also which is something that maybe the police is going to get away with for today. there were so many young youth who were being arrested in the morning hours. But I think, and many people were literally, if you're going to the shop or you're just sitting around, all of a sudden you're being, picked up. So many people actually are in jail as we speak. So maybe a few could be lucky and they'll probably be released. So it's a mix. There are those who think life is going on normally, and then there are homes that are going to probably sleep without their sons or husbands tonight.
Thanks again, Halima, and please do stay safe.
Thank you.
In the meantime, a Ugandan tribal king has returned home to a hero's welcome 7 years after dozens of people were killed during a police raid on his palace. In 2016, Charles Wesley Mumbere was accused of commanding a militia from his palace with the aim of breaking away to create an independent state. The Ugandan government said just over 100 people were killed during the police operation, but rights groups said many more had died. King Mumbere and dozens of others faced several charges, including treason, murder, and terrorism, but prosecutors dropped the case after they applied for amnesty. The Rwenzururu Kingdom of ethnic Bakonzo people has a history of separatist leanings and long simmering tensions with the Ugandan government. Welcome back. The Chief of Staff of Burkina Faso's gendarmerie has been sacked a week after 4 officers, including 2 of his former close associates, were arrested on suspicion of involvement in a plot against state security. According to a presidential decree signed by Ibrahim Traoré, Lieutenant Colonel Evrard Sumder has now been replaced as head of the National Gendarmerie by Lieutenant Colonel Kaugri Natama. Previously, commander of the 1st Gendarmerie Region, that's Lieutenant Colonel Natama, had previously headed the Departmental Gendarmerie of Kaya in the northern region where the regiment of Traoré was based. Captain Traoré later seized power in a coup d'etat on September 30, 2022. And as France relations with Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger sours, students in these West African countries are bearing the brunt of the row. Many of them who had visas to go study in the European country are now unsure of their situation.
Burkina Faso medical student Alfred Nikiama lit up as he read an email from his university allowing him to resume visa paperwork for training at a French hospital next year after being in limbo since France suspended consular services in the country. Nikiama had almost given up his dream of spending a mandatory year in France for his psychiatry specialization and resolved to doing his internship in Burkina Faso hospital instead.
Yes, you could say that we are relieved to receive an email telling us that we've been reinstated and that we could go and complete our studies and training in France. As I said, it's true that when we initially got the news that we couldn't go, it wasn't easy, even if we could continue my training here. But the fact that we are able to go to another country to gain another type of experience is enriching. Receiving this email makes us happy and content.
International law student Tondri Yara stood in front of a French visa center in the capital, Ouagadougou, hoping for some good news. The 28-year-old had been preparing his exchange at a university campus in France since October 2022.
Of course, the suspension is harmful because it really undermines everything we've been doing. You need to know that the Campus France procedure takes a year to get ready, and we started with it in October 2022. And then at the last minute, you can't get a visa. It takes a lot of energy, and you have to change all your plans. But we're not that desperate, because for me, France isn't the only destination.
Hundreds of students, researchers and artists with upcoming professional trips to France that can take months of planning have been uncertain about getting their visas due to deteriorating relations with France following a string of coups in Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger over the past 3 years. As relations with these countries turned bitter, prompting France to close its consular services due to security concerns, long-standing cultural ties have also been strained. There are concerns that visa issues could further fuel anti-French sentiment and strain relations, raising further doubts about France's future in the region. According to a French diplomatic source, last year, France issued around 900 visas for Burkina Faso nationals, over 600 to Malians, and 436 to Nigerians seeking to study or intern in the country. But this year, students, doctors, artists, and business people who've had access to education and work experience in France for decades are having to rethink their plans and risk losing a year in the process.
Egyptian opposition parties say people trying to endorse candidates hoping to stand against President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in the December election have been repeatedly obstructed from doing so. Potential candidates are expected to secure the backing of at least 25,000 members of the public from 15 different governorates or 20 members of parliament and register their candidacy by October 14th for the December 10 to 12 presidential poll. But members of the Civil Democratic Movement, CDM, which groups together some of Egypt's fragmented opposition, say those trying to submit endorsements for candidates other than President al-Sisi had found public notary offices inaccessible and protected by pro-government activists or thugs. Egypt's National Election Authority has denied this, saying that it has investigated complaints and that such allegations are baseless, also instructing notary offices to extend their hours to allow people to register. The UN Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women and Girls is calling for reforms to gender discriminatory national legislation in countries across the world. Reem Al-Salem made this call during her presentation of a report on violence against women and girls, nationality laws and statelessness to the Third Committee of the UN General Assembly. According to her, almost 50 countries in the world continue to keep nationality laws that have gender discriminatory provisions in their statute books, and also 24 countries women are denied the right to confer nationally on their children on an equal basis with men.
The continued existence of gender discriminatory laws, in my view, is a stark anomaly in the practice of states that claim to be committed to achieving gender equality and also to ending violence against women and girls, because of the myriad of negative human rights consequences that accompany this gender-based discriminatory access to nationality laws. So it results in an avalanche, really, of negative human rights consequences for these women and their families. Today, almost 50 countries in the world continue to keep nationality laws that have gender discriminatory provisions in their statute books. And also in 24 countries, women are denied the right to confer nationality on their children on an equal basis with men. And we know that a number of human rights treaties, including regional ones, emphasize the link between nationality and the enjoyment of other human rights, but also emphasize that there shouldn't be this gender-based discrimination.
And we end with some sports. Morocco and two other nations, Spain and Portugal, have been named hosts of the 2030 Soccer World Cup by FIFA. In a surprise announcement, Uruguay, Argentina and Paraguay will host the opening matches to mark the tournament's centenary. The World Soccer body said the joint bid from Morocco, Portugal and Spain was the sole candidate to host the tournament. FIFA were due to announce the host next year. Wednesday's decision by FIFA marks the first time the World Cup will be staged across 3 continents and 6 countries, which might mean group matches will have to be held in different seasons based on the hemisphere.
In a divided world, FIFA and football are uniting. The FIFA Council, representing the entire world of football, unanimously agreed to celebrate the centenary of the FIFA World Cup, whose first edition was played in Uruguay in 1930 in the most appropriate way. As a result, a celebration will take place in South America, and 3 South American countries, Uruguay, Argentina, and Paraguay, will organize 1 match each of the FIFA World Cup 2030. The first of these 3 matches will of course be played at the stadium where it all began, in Montevideo's mythical Estadio Centenario, precisely to celebrate the centenary edition of the FIFA World Cup.
That's our program today. Thank you for watching. I'm Jackie Rogers.